Commander Day 1 stared at the view screen, his hands gripping the armrests of his command chair until his knuckles turned white. Haven Station hung in the darkness of space like a wounded star, flames spreading across its hull in slow motion. The communications channel crackled with screams and desperate pleas for help, but there was nothing he could do. His patrol vessel was too small, too slow, and too far away. "Sir, we're receiving another broadcast from the Vraktheel ships," his communications officer said, her voice shaking. Day 1 didn't need to hear it. He could see what was happening on every screen. The Vraktheel Empire had sent 12 warships to attack a civilian station. They weren't even pretending this was a military operation. This was a message. This was them showing the galaxy what happened when you were weak. Haven Station had been humanity's pride. 50,000 people lived there, working in the mining operations on the nearby moon. His sister worked there as a teacher. Her husband managed the hydroponics bay. Their 2 children went to school in the station's education sector. Day 1 had visited them just 3 months ago, played with his niece and nephew in the observation deck while they watched ships come and go. Now that observation deck was gone. He watched it tear away from the station's main body, spinning into the void with all the people still inside. "They're not responding to surrender signals," another officer reported. "Haven Station has shut down all weapon systems and is broadcasting white flag protocols on every frequency." "I can see that," Day 1 said quietly. The Vraktheel didn't care. They moved through the station methodically, destroying one section at a time. They were taking their time with it, making sure everyone watched. The view screen shifted to show the Vraktheel broadcast. They were streaming this attack across the entire galactic network. Their commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, tall and covered in dark scales, his 4 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. He spoke in his own language, but the translation scrolled across the bottom of the screen. "Let this be a lesson to all who think they can challenge the Vraktheel Empire. These humans came to the stars thinking they could play with the great powers. They hid behind the Council's protection and pretended to be our equals. Now they learned the price of their arrogance." Day 1 felt something break inside his chest. Not from sadness. Not yet. That would come later. This was something else. Something cold and sharp. Inside Haven Station, Ji-Wan crawled through the maintenance shaft, her hands bleeding from where she'd torn open the access panel. The emergency pod bay was 300 meters away, but the corridor outside was exposed to vacuum. She could hear the hull groaning around her, metal twisting and breaking, as the Vraktheel weapons tore through the station she'd been working in, engineering Sector 7, when the attack started. No warning. No demand for surrender first. Just explosions and screaming. Her supervisor had pushed her toward the emergency exit before the ceiling collapsed on him. She'd run, and kept running, while people died around her. Through the thin walls of the shaft, she could hear voices. Vraktheel voices. They had boarded the station. She pressed herself flat against the cold metal and held her breath. The voices got closer. She heard boots on the deck plating. Then she heard something else. Begging. Human voices begging for their lives in broken galactic standard. "Please, we surrender. We have children here. Please." The response was laughter. Then the sound of weapons firing. Then silence. Ji-Wan bit down on her hand to keep from screaming. She waited until the boots walked away, then kept crawling. She had to survive. Someone had to survive to tell people what happened here. On Earth, Ambassador Hyan sat in the emergency session of the Galactic Council and tried to keep his voice steady. Around him, representatives from 200 different species talked and argued and did nothing useful. The chamber was shaped like a massive amphitheater, with each species delegation seated in their own section. The council speaker, a being made of crystalline structures that chimed when it moved, called for order. "Ambassador Hyan, You have made your position clear, the speaker said. But we must follow proper procedures. The Vrakthul Empire claims that Haven Station was harboring military assets, and that's a lie, Hyan interrupted. Every screen in the chamber showed the live feed from the Vrakthul broadcast. You can all see what they're doing. Those are civilians. There are no military assets on Haven Station. It's a mining colony with families and children. A representative from the Vrakthul delegation stood. He was smaller than the military commander on the screen, but just as arrogant. The humans established themselves in territory we claimed generations ago. They knew the risks. They chose to ignore our warnings. You never issued any warnings, Hyan said. You attacked without any communication, without any attempt at negotiation. This is mass murder, and you're broadcasting it like entertainment. The council chamber erupted in noise. Some species demanded immediate action. Others called for restraint and investigation. The speaker chimed loudly until everyone quieted down. We will form an investigation committee, the speaker announced. They will review all evidence and issue a report within 6 standard months. In the meantime, we call on all parties to show restraint and 6 months? Hyan's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. There won't be anyone left alive in 6 hours. You're going to investigate corpses. We understand your emotional state, Ambassador, but we must follow established protocols. Hyan looked around the chamber. He saw pity in some faces, indifference in others, fear in a few. But he didn't see justice. He didn't see anyone willing to actually do anything. On the view screens, Haven Station's central hub exploded. The reaction drives detonated in a cascade that lit up the darkness. Day One watched from his ship and knew his sister was dead, knew his family was gone, knew that 50,000 people had just been erased from existence while the galaxy watched and debated proper procedures. G1 made it to the emergency pod. She sealed herself inside and launched, the tiny craft shooting away from the dying station. Through the small window, she could see the Vrakthul ships circling the wreckage like scavengers. Her helmet camera had recorded everything. The voices begging, the laughter, the executions. She activated the pod's transmitter and began uploading the footage to every network she could reach. If she was going to die out here in the dark, at least people would know the truth. Back on Earth, the footage began spreading. Billions of humans watched G1's recording. They heard their people begging for mercy. They heard the Vrakthul laughing. They watched their civilization's weakness on display for the entire galaxy to see. In the council chamber, Hyan called for a vote on immediate military intervention. It failed. He called for economic sanctions. It failed. He called for the council to at least condemn the attack in official terms. Even that failed. Too many species were afraid of the Vrakthul. Too many had their own interests to protect. Hyan stood and gathered his papers. The speaker chimed at him. Ambassador, we are not finished with this session. Yes, you are, Hyan said. You're finished. All of you. He walked out of the chamber while the galaxy burned and the council talked. Behind him, on every screen, Haven Station's wreckage drifted through space. 50,000 graves that would never be marked. 50,000 reasons why everything was about to change. The United Terran Parliament Chamber had never been this loud. President Nari stood at her podium, waiting for the representatives to settle down, but they wouldn't stop shouting. Half of them wanted war. The other half wanted to trust the council's investigation process. Nobody was listening to anyone else. Order. Nari's voice boomed through the speakers. We will have order, or I will clear this chamber. The noise dropped to angry muttering. 200 representatives from every nation on Earth sat in their seats, faces red with emotion. Outside the building, millions of protesters filled the streets. Some demanded revenge. Others begged for peace. The entire planet was tearing itself apart. "We have 24 hours to make a decision," Nari said. "The Galactic Council has made their position clear. They will investigate, but they will not act. The question before us is simple. Do we accept this, or do we respond on our own?" Representative Sanchez from the European Union stood up. "Madam President, if we act without Council approval, we risk complete isolation. Every trade agreement, every treaty, every alliance we've built over 30 years will be destroyed. We'll be alone in the galaxy." "We're already alone," someone shouted from the back. "The Council watched our people die and did nothing." The chamber erupted again. Nari closed her eyes and thought about the footage everyone had seen. Jiwan's recording had spread across Earth like wildfire. Every news channel played it. Every social media feed shared it. Billions of people had watched those final moments of Haven Station. General Minnow sat in the military section, silent and still. He'd been preparing for this moment for 15 years, ever since he'd first studied the galactic political structure and realized how fragile it all was. The Council maintained peace through bureaucracy and fear, not through actual strength. They kept everyone talking because nobody wanted to be the first to throw a punch. But someone had thrown a punch. The Vrak Thul had killed 50,000 humans and broadcast it across the galaxy. And the Council had done nothing. Ambassador Hyan walked into the chamber. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past day. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes were red, and he moved like every step hurt. But when he reached the speaker's platform, his voice was clear and strong. "I have spent 12 years as Earth's voice in the Galactic Council," he said. "I have made friends with representatives from 100 different species. I have negotiated treaties and trade agreements. I have worked every single day to build humanity's reputation as a civilized, reasonable, peaceful species." He paused and looked around the chamber. "Yesterday, I watched those friends vote against helping us. Not because they thought we were wrong, not because they believed the Vrak Thul lies, but because they were afraid. Afraid of causing trouble. Afraid of breaking their precious protocols." The chamber was completely silent now. Everyone knew what was coming. "I attended a reception last night," Hyan continued. "A social gathering for council members. Do you know what they talked about? The weather on their homeworlds, their families, their vacation plans. Not one of them mentioned Haven Station. Not one of them offered condolences. They had already moved on." Representative Sanchez spoke up. "Ambassador, I understand your anger, but you don't understand anything," Hyan said, and his voice cracked. "I stood in that council chamber and begged them to help. I showed them the footage. I played them the audio of children screaming. And they formed an investigation committee. They asked everyone to show restraint." He pulled out a data pad and held it up. "This is a report that took me all night to compile. In the past 10 years, the Vrak Thul Empire has attacked 7 different species, destroyed colonies, killed millions. Every single time, the Council investigated. Every single time, they found reasons to do nothing. Do you know why?" Nobody answered. "Because the Vrak Thul are strong. They have a massive military. They control important trade routes, and everyone is too afraid to challenge them. The Council doesn't maintain peace. They maintain a system where the strong do whatever they want, and the weak learn to accept it." General Minnow stood up. "Ambassador Hyan is correct. I've been reviewing classified intelligence for the past 15 years. The galactic peace is an illusion. It only exists because most species are too scared to fight back." President Nari leaned forward. "General, are you saying we should abandon 30 years of diplomatic progress?" "I'm saying that progress was built on a lie," Minnow replied. We thought if we followed the rules and acted civilized, we'd be accepted as equals. But the galaxy doesn't see us that way. They see us as newcomers, as weak, as easy targets. A new voice spoke from the entrance. "May I address the chamber?" Everyone turned. Dr. Hannah walked down the center aisle, her security badge marking her as part of the Classified Research Division. Most representatives didn't even know her name. President Nari looked surprised. "Dr. Hannah, this is a closed session. I have clearance to speak about the Prometheus program," Hannah said. She reached the platform and activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above the chamber. Weapons, spacecraft, military, technology that looked nothing like the peaceful exploration vessels humanity had shown the galaxy. For 20 years, a small group of scientists and engineers has been working on a secret project, Hannah explained. We were told to answer one question. What if the peace fails? What if humanity needs to defend itself against species with superior technology and greater numbers? The hologram showed sleek warships bristling with weapons, autonomous combat drones, kinetic bombardment systems, chemical weapons designed specifically for different alien biologies. We studied every war humanity ever fought, Hannah continued. Every tactic, every strategy, every weapon. Then we adapted them for space warfare. We built things that violate every galactic warfare convention. We created weapons so terrible that we prayed we'd never need to use them. Representative Sanchez looked horrified. You built war crimes in a laboratory? We built deterrence, Hannah corrected. We built the capacity to fight back if diplomacy failed. And now it has failed. The chamber exploded into argument again. Some representatives demanded Hannah's arrest. Others wanted to see more of the weapons. President Nari called for order, but nobody was listening anymore. Ambassador Hyan's voice cut through the noise. I call for a vote. Everyone stopped. Hyan looked exhausted, but determined. I move that Earth immediately withdraw from the Galactic Council. That we declare the Vrakthul Empire an enemy of humanity. And that we authorize General Mino to execute whatever military response he deems necessary. Second, General Minho said immediately. President Nari looked at both men. You understand what you're asking? This isn't just war. This is changing everything. There's no going back from this. There's no going back anyway, Hyan said. Haven Station made sure of that. The only question is whether we accept being victims or choose to fight back. The vote was called. Representatives argued for another hour, but everyone knew how it would end. The footage from Haven Station played on screens throughout the building. Jiwan's terrified breathing. The screams. The laughter. When the votes were tallied, the result was clear. 70% in favor. Earth would withdraw from the Galactic Council. Earth would go to war. President Nari signed the authorization order with a shaking hand. General Mino, you have full authority to execute protocol reversion. God help us all. Minho saluted. We don't need God's help, Madam President. We just need the galaxy to remember what happens when you back a predator into a corner. As the session ended, Dr. Hannah approached Ambassador Hyan. I've been working on these weapons for 20 years, hoping we'd never use them. Now I'm not sure if I should feel relieved or terrified. Hyan looked at the holographic weapons still floating in the air. Feel both. That's what it means to be human. We're capable of building beautiful things and terrible things. We choose civilization every day. But when someone takes that choice away from us, they need to understand what we're capable when we stop choosing peace. Outside, the protesters had gone quiet. News of the vote spread across the planet in seconds. Humanity was going to war. Not a clean war with honorable rules. Not a civilized conflict with proper protocols. A real war fought with every weapon they could build and every tactic they could imagine. The galaxy had told humanity to be civilized while their people died. Now humanity was going to show them the difference between civilization and domestication. General Minnow stood in the military command center and began issuing orders. Ships moved into position. Soldiers prepared for deployment. Weapon systems came online. Earth had spent 30 years playing by the galaxy's rules. Those rules had just been thrown away. Captain Junho checked his equipment one last time. The stealth suit was thin and light, nothing like the heavy armor the Vrakthul used. His team of 12 operators stood in the cargo bay of the Ghost of Haven, preparing for insertion. Lieutenant Sora was piloting the ship, keeping them invisible to every sensor the Vrakthul had. 5 minutes to drop zone. Sora's voice came through his earpiece. Still no sign they've detected us. Good, Junho replied. Remember, we're not here to win a battle. We're here to send a message. The Ghost of Haven was humanity's first true stealth corvette, built using technology that the Galactic Council had banned decades ago. It could slip past sensors, hide in the shadow of asteroids, and disappear into the darkness of space like it was never there. The Vrakthul had no idea it existed. They had no idea what was coming. 3 weeks had passed since Earth's withdrawal from the Galactic Council. 3 weeks of the galaxy watching and waiting to see what humanity would do. The Vrakthul Empire had celebrated their victory at Haven Station. Their media called it a great triumph. Their military commanders received medals and honors. They thought they'd won. They thought Earth would eventually accept the Council's investigation and move on. Maybe file some complaints. Maybe impose some useless sanctions. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The cargo bay door opened to the vacuum of space. Junho and his team jumped out, using small thrusters to guide themselves toward the Vrakthul military installation below. It was a communications hub on a border world, responsible for coordinating fleet movements across 3 star systems. In exactly 4 minutes, 5 other teams would hit 5 other targets, all at the same time, all using the same tactics. Junho's boots touched the outer hull of the station. He moved across the surface like a spider, placing charges at key structural points. His team spread out, each operator knowing exactly what to do. They'd trained for this mission for years, practicing on mock-ups of Vrakthul architecture. Inside the station, Vrakthul soldiers went about their duties, completely unaware that death was crawling across their walls. Junho reached the main communications array. He pulled out a small device, no bigger than his thumb, and attached it to the primary relay. The device was simple. It would hack into the Vrakthul network and broadcast a message on every military frequency they had. He activated it and began his retreat. The team made it back to the Ghost of Haven with 30 seconds to spare. Sora fired the engines, and the ship vanished into the darkness just as the charges detonated. The Vrakthul communications hub tore itself apart. Explosions rippled across the structure, cutting power and venting atmosphere. Emergency systems activated, but they were too late. The station was already dead. And then the message started broadcasting. Every Vrakthul military vessel in 3 star systems heard it. The screams from Haven Station, the begging, the children crying, the laughter of Vrakthul soldiers as they executed surrendering civilians. The recording that Jiwon had made played on an endless loop, broadcast from 6 different locations simultaneously. Chieftain Gormith was in his flagship when the message started. He was the military commander responsible for the Haven Station attack, the one who had stood on his bridge and broadcast the destruction to the galaxy. Now he listened to his own soldiers laughing at the murder of children. He tried to shut it off, but the signal kept coming. His communications officers worked frantically to block it, but every time they closed one channel, it appeared on another. "Sir, all 6 relay stations are down," his tactical officer reported. "We're getting reports of simultaneous attacks across our border territories." "Humans," Gormith growled. "Find them. Kill them all." "Sir, we can't find them. They're not on any sensors. It's like they're ghosts." The message kept playing. Gormith's crew was getting restless. Some of them had never actually heard what happened at Haven Station. They'd celebrated the victory without knowing the details. Now they knew. Now they understood what they'd done. At another Vrakthul outpost, a small package arrived via automated drone. The guards scanned it for weapons and found only ashes and a note. They brought it to their commander, who read the message written in perfect Vrakthul script. "You wanted to show the galaxy what happens when you attack the weak. We're showing you what happens when the weak stop pretending." The ashes were analyzed. They were organic. Vrakthul, organic material. DNA tests confirmed they were the remains of the soldiers who had boarded. Haven Station got the commander, sent the report up the chain of command. Within hours, every Vrakthul military leader knew about it. The humans had somehow identified every soldier involved in the Haven Station boarding action, hunted them down across multiple worlds, and killed them all. Then they'd burned the bodies and sent the ashes back as a message. The Vrakthul Empire responded with fury. They assembled their 3rd fleet, 20 massive warships that had conquered a dozen species. They sent them to crush the human forces and show the galaxy that the Vrakthul could not be challenged. Admiral Gormith commanded the fleet personally. He was tired of these humans playing their tricks and hiding in the shadows. It was time for a real battle. Ship against ship. Honor against honor. He found the human fleet waiting for him at the edge of a nebula. 6 ships. Tiny things compared to his massive cruisers. Gormith smiled. This would be easy. "All ships advance," he ordered. "Destroy them." The human ships scattered immediately. They didn't try to fight. They just ran. Gormith's fleet pursued, breaking formation to chase down the fleeing vessels. That's when the ambush happened. The nebula lit up with weapons fire. Dozens of automated drones swarmed out of the gas clouds, attacking the Vrakthul ships from every direction. They were small and fast, impossible to target effectively. And they carried weapons that shouldn't have existed. Chemical weapons that ate through Vrakthul armor. Electromagnetic pulses that fried their systems. Kinetic rounds that punched through shields like they weren't there. Gormith's flagship lost power. Life support failed. Emergency lights flickered on as his crew scrambled for their suits. Through the viewport, he watched his fleet fall apart. Ships dead in space. Escape pods launching in all directions. Then the human ships returned. But they didn't fire. Captain Junho's voice came through on the emergency frequency. "Chieftain Gormith, this is Captain Junho of the Terran Defense Forces. Your fleet is disabled. Your crews are evacuating. We could kill all of you right now." Gormith waited for the killing blow. "But we won't," Junho continued. "We're going to let you live. We're going to let all of you live. Go home. Tell your people what happened here. Tell them we're done being civilized. Tell them what mercy looks like from humanity. You won't get it twice." The human ships vanished into the nebula, leaving the Vrakthul fleet floating helpless in the darkness. Rescue ships would arrive eventually. Most of the crews would survive, but they would never forget this moment. The moment they learned that humanity didn't fight like other species. They didn't line up their ships and exchange honorable fire. They struck from the shadows, used tactics that no civilized species would consider, and showed mercy only when it served their purpose. Back on the Vrakthul homeworld, the military council watched the reports come in. 6 installations destroyed. The 3rd fleet disabled. Casualties surprisingly low, but humiliation absolute. How is this possible? One general demanded. They're a young species. They have limited resources. How are they doing this? An intelligence officer stood up, his scales pale with fear. Sir, I've been studying Earth's military history. Before they joined the galactic community, they fought wars among themselves for thousands of years. They've developed tactics and strategies that we've never seen because they've been fighting each other since before most of our species reached the stars. He pulled up a display showing Earth's history. They call it guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, total war. They have names for things we don't even have concepts for. And they've been building weapons in secret for 20 years, preparing for exactly this scenario. The council chamber was silent. What do we do? Someone asked. Nobody had an answer. The Vrakthul Empire had ruled through strength and intimidation for generations. They had never encountered a species that fought like this. A species that turned their own tactics against them. A species that understood the difference between being civilized and being weak. Captain Junho sat in the Ghost of Haven's mess hall, eating a simple meal with his team. Lieutenant Sora joined them, exhausted from piloting through the nebula combat. Think they got the message? She asked. Junho nodded. They got it. Question is whether they're smart enough to listen. And if they're not, then we keep sending messages until they are. He looked at his team, seeing the same cold determination in their eyes. The galaxy wanted us to be civilized. We tried. We followed their rules, trusted their systems, believed in their justice. Look where it got us. He pulled up the image of Haven Station on his tablet. The wreckage still floated in space, a monument to 50,000 dead. We'll be civilized again someday, Juno said. When it's safe to be? When being peaceful doesn't make us targets. But right now, we show them what humans really are. Not the diplomatic newcomers they thought they knew. The species that clawed its way to the top of its own planet's food chain and survived every disaster nature could throw at it. The team finished their meal in silence. Above them, the stars waited. And somewhere in that darkness, the galaxy was beginning to understand what it meant to push humanity too far. The galactic council chamber looked different this time. Half the seats were empty. 20 species had already withdrawn their ambassadors, some in protest of Earth's actions, others quietly slipping away before they had to pick a side. The remaining delegates sat in tense silence, waiting for the speaker to begin. Ambassador Hyan stood in the human delegation section, even though Earth was no longer a council member. They'd allowed him to attend as an observer, mainly because nobody wanted to admit they were afraid to throw him out. The speaker's crystalline form chimed loudly. We are here to vote on Resolution 2847, which declares humanity a rogue civilization and authorizes member species to defend Vrakthul territory against human aggression. A Vrakthul representative stood up, his scales darker than usual with anger. The humans have attacked 6 of our installations without provocation. They use illegal weapons and cowardly tactics. They refuse to fight honorably. This resolution is necessary to protect civilized species from their barbarism. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. But Hyan noticed that many delegates weren't nodding. They were watching, calculating, waiting to see which way the political winds would blow. Ambassador Hyan, though Earth is no longer a member, we will allow you to speak before the vote, the speaker said. Hyan walked to the central platform. He carried a datapad and looked tired, but his voice was strong when he spoke. Thank you, Speaker. I want to talk about the word provocation. The Vrakthul claim we attacked without provocation. Let me show you what provocation looks like. He activated the holographic display. Images filled the chamber. Haven Station burning. Children's bodies floating in space. Vrakthul soldiers executing civilians who were clearly surrendering. This is provocation, Hyan said. 50,000 civilians murdered while you all watched. And when we begged for help, you formed an investigation committee. He pulled up more images. But Haven Station wasn't the first. 10 years ago, the Vrakthul attacked 3 Tethany colonies. The council investigated and did nothing. 8 years ago, they raided Myrthan trade routes. The council imposed sanctions that were never enforced. 5 years ago, they destroyed a Kelter science station. The council expressed deep concern. The chamber was completely silent now. I have a list of 47 attacks by the Vrakthul Empire over the past 15 years, Hyan continued. Attacks on civilian targets. Attacks on unarmed vessels. Attacks that violated every warfare convention the Council claims to uphold. And every single time, the Council did nothing. You know why? Because you were afraid. He looked around at the assembled delegates. The Vrakthul are strong. They have a powerful military. They control important trade routes. So you let them do whatever they wanted because opposing them was inconvenient. You built a system where might makes right, then pretended it was justice. The Vrakthul delegates started to protest, but Hyan cut him off. You want to talk about illegal weapons? About cowardly tactics? Let me tell you what's cowardly. Broadcasting the murder of children as entertainment is cowardly. Attacking civilian stations is cowardly. Hiding behind the Council's bureaucracy while you commit atrocities is cowardly. He deactivated the display. Earth is done playing by rules that only apply to the weak. We're done pretending that your system is just. We're done being civilized while our people die. So go ahead and vote. Declare us rogue. Authorize action against us. See what happens. The vote was called. It passed, barely. 60% in favor. But Hyan noticed which species voted against it. And more importantly, which species abstained. After the session, Hyan returned to his temporary office. He found 3 encrypted messages waiting for him. The first was from a Tethany ambassador. We cannot publicly support you, but we remember our colonies. If you need safe harbor in our territory, you have it. The second was from a Myrthan trade minister. Our merchant fleets are at your disposal. What the Council doesn't know won't hurt them. The third was from a Kelter scientist. We've been developing weapons in secret, just like you. We never thought we'd use them. But if you're going to challenge the Vrakthul, we want to help. Hyan forwarded the messages to President Nari and General Minho. Earth wasn't alone. The galaxy was full of species tired of being victims, waiting for someone strong enough to stand up to the bullies. On Earth, Intelligence Officer Quan was tracking the political shifts in real time. Her job was to analyze the galactic response to Earth's actions and predict which species would become allies, enemies, or neutral parties. It's fascinating, she told General Minho during their briefing. The Council is fracturing along predictable lines. Species that have been attacked by the Vrakthul are quietly supporting us. Species that benefit from the current power structure are opposing us. And the rest are trying to figure out which side will win. Minho studied the charts she'd prepared. What about military response? Will any Council species actually send forces to defend the Vrakthul? Unlikely, Quan said. They voted to authorize it, but nobody wants to be the first to actually engage human forces. They've seen what we did to the Third Fleet. They're scared. Good, Minho replied. Fear is useful. It keeps people thinking before they act. President Nari joined the meeting, looking exhausted. She'd been managing the political situation on Earth, while also trying to coordinate with their secret allies in other systems. We have a problem, she said. The Vrakthul are planning a major offensive. They're going to attack 3 of our colony worlds simultaneously. They want to force us into a conventional battle where their superior numbers will matter. Minho pulled up a star map. Which colonies? New Sol, Bizen Station, and the mining outpost at Daegu Prime. All civilian populations. Total of about 200,000 people. Quan felt her stomach drop. They're going to do another Haven Station. Show the galaxy that we can't protect our own people. Probably, Nari agreed. But this time, we know it's coming. General, can we evacuate? Minho shook his head. Not in time. And if we evacuate, the Vrakthul will claim we abandoned our colonies out of fear. It'll make us look weak. Then what do we do? Minho smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. We give them the conventional battle they want. But we do it our way. At New Sol Colony, Jiwan stood in the engineering bay and ran diagnostics on the defense systems. After surviving Haven Station, she'd retrained as a combat engineer. She'd requested assignment to the most vulnerable colony, the one most likely to be attacked. She wanted to be there when the Vrakthul came. She wanted to look them in the eyes. The colony administrator approached her. G1, we're getting reports that a Vrakthul fleet is heading this way. Command says we have 48 hours. How many ships? 30. Maybe more. G1 looked at the defense grid she'd spent the past 3 weeks upgrading. Automated turrets. Shield generators. Emergency evacuation systems. It wasn't enough to stop 30 warships, but it might buy time. We're not evacuating, she said. The administrator nodded. He'd expected that answer. Everyone in New Sol had seen the footage from Haven Station. They knew what was coming. But they also knew that running would accomplish nothing. We fight, Jiwan said. We make them pay for every meter. And we make sure the galaxy sees what happens when you attack Earth's colonies. The Vrakthul fleet arrived exactly on schedule. Chieftain Gormith, still burning with humiliation from the Third Fleet disaster, commanded the assault. This time there would be no tricks, no ambushes, just overwhelming force against a poorly defended colony. All ships, begin bombardment, he ordered. The fleet opened fire. But something was wrong. The colony's shields were stronger than they should be. The automated defense turrets were more accurate. And the colony was fighting back with weapons that shouldn't exist on a civilian station. Inside New Sol, G1 coordinated the defense from the engineering bay. She'd turned the entire colony into a fortress. Every system was connected, every weapon slaved to a central AI that predicted Vrakthul tactics and responded before they could adapt. Evacuate Sector 7, she called into her communicator. They're focusing fire there. Route everyone to the emergency bunkers. The colony shook as Vrakthul weapons hammered the shields. But the shields held. And every time a Vrakthul ship got too close, the defense turrets tore into it with focused fire. Gormith watched in growing frustration. This was supposed to be easy. A civilian colony shouldn't have military-grade defenses. The humans were supposed to fold quickly, giving him the victory he needed to restore his honor. Instead, they were fighting like cornered animals, using every advantage they could find. Sir, the other 2 colonies are showing similar resistance, his tactical officer reported. And we're detecting human warships approaching. How many? 10 ships, sir. Small ones. Gormith sneered. 10 ships against our fleet? They're fools. But the human ships didn't engage directly. They launched swarms of drones that flew through the Vrakthul formation, targeting sensors and communications arrays. They used the colonies as cover, forcing the Vrakthul to risk hitting civilian structures if they wanted to shoot back. And all of it was being broadcast. Every news network in the galaxy watched the battle unfold. They saw the Vrakthul attacking civilians again. They saw the humans defending their people with everything they had. They saw the difference between predator and prey, After 6 hours of brutal fighting, Gormith realized he was losing. Not militarily, but politically. Every shot he fired at the colony made the Vrakthul look worse. Every civilian casualty was another piece of evidence that the Council had been wrong to support them. He ordered the retreat. Inside New Seoul, Ji-won collapsed in her chair as the all-clear signal sounded. The colony had survived. They'd lost 300 people, but they'd survived. And more importantly, they'd shown the galaxy that humanity would protect its own. President Nari watched the battle reports with satisfaction. 3 colonies defended. Minimal casualties. And the galaxy had seen what happened when humans stood their ground. The Council is calling for an emergency session, Kwan reported. Apparently, some member species are demanding answers about why they're supporting the Vrakthul. Nari smiled. Let them demand. The galaxy is starting to understand that the old system is broken, and we're building something new. General Minho stood in the command center, looking at the holographic display of Vrakthul Prime. The enemy homeworld hung in space like a target, protected by hundreds of orbital defense platforms and a fleet that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. This is insane, one of his officers said quietly. We can't assault their homeworld. They have too many defenses. We're not going to assault it, Minho replied. We're going to dismantle it, piece by piece. For 3 months, Earth had been fighting a guerrilla war across Vrakthul space. Hit and run attacks, sabotage, psychological operations. The Vrakthul military was bleeding from 1,000 cuts, never able to land a decisive blow against an enemy that refused to fight fair. Now it was time to end it. Lieutenant Sora piloted the Ghost of Haven toward the outer defense perimeter. Behind her, 50 stealth ships followed in perfect formation. They'd been built specifically for this mission, using every trick humanity had learned about avoiding detection. Entering weapons range, she reported. Still no sign they've spotted us. Good, Captain Juno replied from his seat in the tactical station. Teams 1 through 10, prepare for synchronized strike. We're going to take down those orbital platforms all at once. The Vrakthul had arranged their defenses in a predictable pattern. Large platforms with overlapping fields of fire, designed to stop any fleet that tried to approach the planet. They were massive, powerful, and completely unprepared for what was about to happen. They told us to be civilized while our people died. We showed them that civilization is not the absence of violence. It's knowing when violence is necessary and when to stop. A human child ran past, chasing an alien child in some kind of game. They laughed together, completely unaware of the history that made their friendship possible. Unaware of the blood that watered this peace, Nari smiled. That was exactly how it should be. The children shouldn't have to remember. That was the job of the adults, of the survivors, of the ones who lived through the dark time and chose to build something better. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, forced to choose between extinction and transformation. They'd chosen to fight, using every weapon and tactic their violent history had taught them. But when the fighting stopped, they'd made another choice. To rebuild, to protect, to create a system where no species would have to make the choice they'd been forced to make. The universe was still dangerous. There were still species that respected only strength. But now there was a coalition willing to meet strength with strength, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, to enforce justice when institutions failed. And at the center of it all was humanity. Not the peaceful newcomers the galaxy had thought they knew. Not the barbarians some feared they'd become. But something in between. A species capable of terrible violence and remarkable compassion, choosing civilization every day while never forgetting the cost of that choice. The stars above, Remembrance Station burned with ancient light. And below them, the galaxy was learning what it meant to push a predator species too far. and what it meant when that species chose mercy. The war was over. The peace was armed, and the victims finally had defenders. They told us to be civilized while our people died. We showed them that civilization is not the absence of violence. It's knowing when violence is necessary and when to stop. A human child ran past, chasing an alien child in some kind of game. They laughed together, completely unaware of the history that made their friendship possible. Unaware of the blood that watered this peace, Nari smiled. That was exactly how it should be. The children shouldn't have to remember. That was the job of the adults, of the survivors, of the ones who lived through the dark time and chose to build something better. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, forced to choose between extinction and transformation. They'd chosen to fight, using every weapon and tactic their violent history had taught them. But when the fighting stopped, they'd made another choice. To rebuild, to protect, to create a system where no species would have to make the choice they'd been forced to make. The universe was still dangerous. There were still species that respected only strength. But now there was a coalition willing to meet strength with strength, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, to enforce justice when institutions failed. And at the center of it all was humanity. Not the peaceful newcomers the galaxy had thought they knew. Not the barbarians some feared they'd become. But something in between. A species capable of terrible violence and remarkable compassion, choosing civilization every day while never forgetting the cost of that choice. The stars above, Remembrance Station burned with ancient light. And below them, the galaxy was learning what it meant to push a predator species too far, and what it meant when that species chose mercy. The war was over. The peace was armed, and the victims finally had defenders.